Hey guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I thought I would bring you into the kitchen today to make a recipe that I have not made in forever. Every so often I like to go through my website, cosmopolitancornbread.com, and just kind of go through some of the older recipes and give them a little bit of a facelift and maybe update the ingredients and things like that. And this is one of those recipes. Now this is for an orange pound cake. And I don't know about you guys, but when winter rolls around and it's been cold and dreary for a bit, I find myself craving citrus. And maybe it's just because it's such a light and refreshing kind of flavor when you've been eating a lot of heavy and rich foods. I don't know, but I just felt like today was the perfect day to make this orange pound cake. Now, the recipe originally made 2 cakes, but I am updating that to just make 1 because you can always double it if you want to, but it's very rare that I need 2 pound cakes. Of course, you could make one now and freeze the other one for later, but I just felt like it's not that often that I actually need 2, so I have been updating it and all of that, and changed up the glaze that I originally put on there. So again, this is for an orange pound cake. It uses fresh oranges and orange zest, and then there's a very simple glaze that goes over the top. So I'm going to grab an apron and get started. All right. So to get started, I'm going to coat my loaf pan here. I've got my mixture that I do, which I'm almost out of, but I should have enough for today. This is an equal part of flour, oil, and organic vegetable shortening. Now, I've had a couple people ask me if you could use coconut oil instead of the shortening. I haven't tried that before, but I think in this next batch, I'll make like a little batch and see how that turns out. But generally, I always use the all-purpose flour, the olive oil, and the shortening. So that has been my go-to for many, many years. So I'm just going to go ahead and coat this, the bottom and the sides, real good. And this is just a standard size loaf pan, 4 by 8, I guess it is. I'm going to set that aside. Okay, so now I'm going to measure out my dry ingredients. I need 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, a 1/4 teaspoon each of baking soda and baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and I'm just going to give these a quick stir to combine those. And set that aside for now. Alright, so next I'm going to zest an orange. I need about 2 tablespoons of zest, and this isn't anything that I honestly ever really measure. I just kind of eyeball it. I figure 1 good size orange will do the trick. And I'm just using a microplaner here. This will take off the zest, which is that very outer surface of the orange peel, You don't want to go into the white part, that's called the pith, and it's actually kind of bitter. So you're just taking the top of the skin, and that's where all of the oils are, which is where all the flavor is in the orange peel. Alright. And I'm just going to set this aside as well for a little bit. And then I'm going to take the orange that I just zested and I'm going to juice it. I'm going to need, for the cake, I'm going to need 2 tablespoons of orange juice. And I'm going to juice this through a little strainer that I have. You could use a sieve or whatever you've got handy to just get the juice and leave all the rest of the stuff out. All right, now I'm not going to be done with this orange. I'm going to use this again when I do the glaze, and I might actually need a second orange. It just depends on how much juice I get out of this half. So I'm just going to set that aside for the time being. And so now I'm going to pull out my mixer here, and I've got 1 stick or half a cup of unsalted butter. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this in my mixing bowl, and I'm going to start beating it and getting it nice and fluffy. Next, I'm going to add in 1 cup of granulated sugar, which is just your normal white sugar. Beat those together. Now I'm going to add in 2 eggs. Now I'm going to add in a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Give it a quick stir. Now I'm going to need some buttermilk, and I need 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons, which on a measuring cup like this, it'll put it right in between the 1/4 cup and the 1/2 cup measurement. All right, so now I don't need to add this quite yet. I'm going to go ahead and begin adding my dry ingredients to my mixing bowl here. I'm just going to add about half of it. And I'm going to mix that together. Okay, I'm going to add in my buttermilk. that a mix. And the other half of my dry ingredients here. Mix again. Okay, let me give the bowl a scrape. Make sure we're getting everything down in there. Okay, and then for the orange juice, again, I just need 2 tablespoons of this at this point. Perfect. And the orange zest. And we're going to mix those in. Give it one last stir to make sure everything is combined. All right, and then we're going to put it into the baking pan here. We'll spread that out in the pan. Get it kind of even. All right, so now this is going to go into the oven, 350 degrees for 55 to 60 minutes, or until it tests done with a wooden skewer or toothpick inserted into the center. Alright, so I just washed all of my dishes, but I still need to wash this stuff up. So I'm going to go ahead and juice the other half of the orange. So I've just got about 1/4 cup of orange juice here. And I'm going to set that aside for when I need it to make the glaze. Alright, the pound cake is out of the oven. I'm going to let it sit here for just a couple of minutes and let it cool just a little bit. Then I'll take a knife, go around the edges of the pan and remove the pound cake and let it cool. Then I will glaze it in a little bit. Now, I have 2 different glaze recipes that I have put on these pound cakes. Now, the first one is made with regular granulated sugar, and you simmer it and you pour it over the cake while the cake is actually still warm. The other one is made with powdered sugar, and you just whisk it together with the other ingredients, and that one goes on the cake when it is cooled, and that is the one that I'm going to make for today. Alright you guys, so my cake is done cooling and I put it on this pretty little platter here. So now I'm going to go ahead and make my glaze. I've got 1/4 cup of powdered sugar and I put it in kind of a deep bowl, that way I can whisk it without making a mess. I'm going to add in a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I never really measure it, I just kind of eyeball it. And then I'm going to add in some orange juice. And I'm going to whisk these until they're nice and smooth. And I think that is good. I don't really need any more orange juice. So you can see here it's thin enough that I can drizzle it. Alright, so I've got a spoon here and I'm just going to start drizzling this glaze all over the top of the cake. Now if you wanted this glaze to be really thick and make it almost like a frosting on top, you would just use a little bit less of the orange juice to make it thicker. I kind of like the drizzly look, and I like how it sort of drips down the sides, but it's just a matter of preference. Alright, so that is it. That's how you make this fantastic orange pound cake with the orange glaze on top. And I often have people ask me to cut into the cakes or break open cookies or slice the bread so that they can see what the inside of it looks like. And so I will do that here in just a second. But before I do that, I just wanted to let you know that there is, of course, a printable version of this recipe on my website, cosmopolitancornbread.com, and I will put a link where you can get that down below underneath this video here on YouTube, if that is where you are watching this. Now, if you are new here, my name is Constance, and I do at least 3 videos every week on homesteading, home cooking, and back to basics. And over on my website, you can find hundreds of recipes and articles to browse through. So be sure to sign up for my free newsletter if you aren't already signed up, and you can find a link for that down below as well. So thanks for joining me here again in the Homestead Kitchen. I will talk to y'all next time.